Chapter 10. The Truth. Dr. Losburn had set out for London as soon as he received Rose Maylie's letter, which explained the whole situation. With his help, Mr. Brownlow was able to find Monks, the man who had plotted with Fagin against Oliver. Mr. Brownlow threatened to tell the police all that he knew unless Monks came quietly to his lodgings. When they were inside, Mr. Brownlow said, "You can call yourself Monks now, but I have known you by another name, Leaford. Your father was my best friend. Now I know that he had two sons, you and your half-brother, Oliver Twist. You have done everything you could to prevent Oliver from inheriting the money that his father left him." Monks looked as if he wanted to run out the door, but Dr. Losburn was guarding it. "I knew your mother well," continued Mr. Brownlow. "She was a mean, nasty woman who made your father miserable. She left your father when you were very young and took you with her. After you were grown, he met and became friends with a retired naval officer. The officer was a good man who was raising two daughters on his own. Oliver's father fell in love with the older daughter, and this was Oliver's mother, a lovely, sweet woman named Agnes, with a younger sister to care for. A few months before Oliver was born, your father was called away on a very important business to Rome. He became very ill there and died. Your mother went to Rome on the day that your father died. She destroyed his will. Then you claimed his fortune for yourself. Poor Agnes was on her way to London to seek advice from me when she was overtaken by robbers. They left her in the streets penniless and alone. She walked on for as long as she could before she dropped to the ground in exhaustion. The police found her and brought her to the nearest workhouse, where she gave birth to a boy, Oliver. When you returned to England, you pretended to help me look for Agnes and her sister. You made me believe that Agnes was her child and her sister had all died. In fact, you paid someone to take Agnes' sister to a workhouse in a distant city. Later, she was adopted by a kind woman named Mrs. Maylie. Yes, we know that Rose Maylie is Agnes' sister and Oliver's aunt. Chance brought Oliver to me in London. While he was at my house, I noticed his resemblance to Agnes in the portrait I have of her. You gave me that portrait. It belonged to your father. You brought it back with you from Rome and left it with me. I began to suspect a connection between Oliver and you. I remembered that you had lived in the West Indies, and I went there in search of you. When I couldn't find you, I returned to London. You wanted Fagin to make Oliver steal. You were willing to pay him to do so. That is because, according to your father's will, Oliver cannot inherit any money if he has committed a crime. Mr. Brownlow forced Monks to sign a paper stating that Oliver Twist was the son of his father, Edwin Leaford, and therefore entitled to half of his fortune. Then Monks was taken away by the police. In the meantime, Fagin had been led away to a cold stone jail cell, where he was to remain until the day he would be hanged for his crimes. At his trial, crowds of people had pressed into the courtroom in order to see him. All regarded him with horror. When the judge announced that Fagin had been found guilty by the jury and was sentenced to die on the gallows, a tremendous cheer shook the courthouse. As he sat alone in his cell, Fagin shuddered to recall all the men he had known who had died on the gallows. Their faces rose up before him in the darkness. There were so many that he could hardly count them all. He had seen some of them die and had joked about it later. How quickly they had changed from this powerful man to dangling heaps of clothes. Now Fagin was to die in the very same way.